Hello, my name is Jessica.
I want to tell you something that changed my life. It's about how I started learning English while I was sleeping. Yes, really. My journey may sound strange, but it worked better than I ever expected. My name is Jessica, and for a long time, learning English felt like trying to run with heavy shoes on. I wanted to go fast, I really did, but something always slowed me down. Every time I opened a grammar book, it felt like my mind went blank. I would try to read the rules, underline the verbs, and make flashcards of new vocabulary. I did everything that teachers told me to do. I followed the YouTube videos. I joined online classes. I even bought expensive courses. But still, I struggled to speak. I struggled to understand fast English. I struggled to remember the words I studied the night before. It was frustrating. I used to sit at my desk with a notebook open, my pen ready, and my favorite mug of coffee beside me thinking, okay, tonight I'll finally learn something new. But halfway through, I would feel tired, distracted, and sometimes even bored. Not because English was boring. No, I loved the idea of speaking English. I loved how it sounded. I dreamed of traveling to the US, making international friends, watching movies without subtitles. But the learning part, that was the hard part. That was where I felt stuck. I remember one evening very clearly. I had just come home from work. It was already past 8 p.m. My feet hurt, my back ached, and all I wanted was to lie down and watch something easy. But I also felt guilty. I hadn't practiced English all day. I kept thinking, Jessica, if you don't practice, you'll never improve. So I forced myself to sit at my desk. I opened my English notebook, the same one I had filled with verbs, questions, and useful phrases. I stared at the page. Nothing went into my head. It was like my brain had closed the door for the night. I tried to watch an English video. The speaker talked fast, and I couldn't catch the meaning. I pressed pause, rewind, replay, still nothing. My eyes were open, but my mind was somewhere else. Maybe on my bed, maybe already dreaming. I closed my laptop and sighed. That night, I didn't study. I couldn't. I was tired not just in my body, but in my mind too. And that's when the thoughts started coming. Is this even worth it? Will I ever speak English well? The truth is, I never gave up completely. I would have these low days, but deep inside, something kept pushing me. A small voice that said, keep going, Jessica. Don't stop. Just find a better way. I knew that I couldn't keep burning out like this. I needed a method that didn't feel like hard work. A method that didn't require me to sit at a table and stare at textbooks when my body was already exhausted. So one night, after brushing my teeth and getting into bed, I decided to scroll on my phone, not for social media, not for shopping, just something light to watch before sleep. That's when I found something that caught my attention. It was a video titled, Learn English While You Sleep, Real Phrases with Native Pronunciation. I paused for a moment. What did that mean? Learn English while sleeping? It sounded like a joke. Or maybe a trick. I clicked on the video anyway, just out of curiosity. The video began with a calm, slow voice saying, Good evening. Relax your body. Get ready for sleep. And let English flow into your mind. The next part was simple. The speaker said a sentence in English, then repeated it slowly, then paused. Then another sentence, then another. Things like, how are you today? Or where is the nearest coffee shop? Simple, everyday questions. I let the video play. I was lying in bed, my room dark, the sound low but clear. I didn't plan to study. I just listened. My eyes were already closing. I didn't understand every word, but I didn't try hard either. I just let it play in the background like soft music. The next morning, something strange happened. I woke up with one sentence in my mind. What would you like to eat? It was so clear as if someone had spoken to me in a dream. I got out of bed, brushed my teeth, and suddenly I said this sentence out loud. What would you like to eat? I didn't even think about it. It just came out. I stood in the mirror and repeated again, this time with a little smile. That's when I remembered the video I had played the night before. It was one of the sentences the speaker used. I thought, wait a minute, did I actually learn this in my sleep? My heart beat a little faster. I couldn't believe it. All those long nights studying with books didn't give me this result. But one night of sleeping with English audio gave me something real, something I remembered. I started searching for more information. I typed sleep learning English into Google. I found many articles and videos. Some people said it worked. Others said it didn't. But the thing that caught my attention the most was something called passive listening. That's when you hear a language without focusing too hard. You don't study it directly. You just let it enter your ears and mind naturally. I thought about how children learn their first language. They don't sit with grammar books. They listen every day. To their parents, to music, to sounds around them. Slowly they start to speak. Could the same idea help adults learn a second language? I decided to try an experiment. For 1 week, I would play English audio every night while I slept. I would not use any textbooks. I would not do any writing exercises. I would only listen. Simple, soft, slow English. Real conversations. Questions and answers. Phrases I could use in daily life. I made a playlist on my phone. I downloaded different audios. One was about meeting new people. Another was about ordering food. One had a short story about a girl and her cat. I made sure each file was about 20 minutes long. That way, it wouldn't keep me awake. That night, I went to bed like usual, but this time, I had my headphones in. I pressed play on the first audio. It was a soft voice saying, "Hello, how are you today?" "I am fine, thank you." "What is your name?" I smiled. I already knew some of these phrases, but hearing them like this slow, gentle, while lying down felt different. It didn't feel like study, it felt like peace. Like I was letting English become part of me without forced thought. By the fourth night. I could feel a change. My brain didn't fight the words anymore. It welcomed them. I didn't try to translate. I just listened. Sometimes I even dreamed in English simple dreams, like being in a cafe and asking, "Can I have some water, please?" I didn't wake up tired. In fact, I woke up feeling curious. What will I remember today? I started to say things to myself in English, just little phrases. Time to eat breakfast. Where are my shoes? They weren't perfect sentences, but they came without effort. That's when I realized this method was helping me more than I thought. Not because I was memorizing words, but because I was building a habit. A quiet, gentle habit that worked while I rested. Still, I had questions. Was I really learning? Or was this just something in my head? I decided to test myself. I met my friend Mia for coffee on Saturday. She's from California and speaks English fluently. Usually, I get nervous around her when she speaks fast. But that day, something changed. She asked me, "What do you want to drink?" And without stopping, I replied, "A small latte, please." She smiled. "Your English is getting better," she said. I was shocked. I didn't think before speaking. I didn't translate in my head. The words just came out. That weekend, I spent time organizing my audio list. I picked my favorite ones, the ones with slow, clear voices. I even created a sleep playlist. From 10:30 p.m. to 11 p.m., I would listen while lying in bed. I didn't pressure myself. I didn't try to remember every word. I just let the English flow like water in a river. And slowly my English started flowing to dot. It wasn't magic. It didn't happen in one day. But it was real. And it was gentle. And for someone like me who worked all day and felt too tired to study at night, it was perfect. I found a way to learn without stress, to grow without pain, and to let English become a natural part of my world. As the days passed, I started to notice more small moments, like when I was walking to the store and I thought, I need some bread in English, or when I watched a movie and I caught a few phrases without subtitles. These weren't big things, but they made me feel powerful, like my brain was working for me even when I wasn't working so hard. I knew I wanted to continue, and I knew I had to make this a part of my life, not just a short experiment. So I planned my nights. I kept my sleep audio ready. I told myself, no pressure, just listen, just rest. And that's when something even more surprising happened. Even though I had started to believe that something good was happening, I have to be honest, the first few nights of trying to learn English in my sleep weren't easy. Not in the way I expected. The idea was simple. Just press play and let the English audio run in the background while I rested. But when the lights went off and my head touched the pillow, I discovered a new kind of difficulty. It wasn't about grammar or vocabulary anymore. It was something more personal, something inside me. The habit of silence at night had lived with me for years. The sudden change felt like I was inviting someone to speak in my bedroom, even though no one was there. The first night after I officially started this new sleep learning plan, I tried to relax like usual. I brushed my teeth, wore my softest pajamas, turned off the lamp beside my bed, and lay down. I had prepared a playlist 20 minutes of slow, calming English phrases spoken by a kind-sounding woman. The voice was peaceful and the sentences were simple. This is a pen. I live in a small town. Would you like some tea? The plan was to listen and let the words sink into my brain while I slept. But instead of falling into a soft dream, I found myself lying wide awake. My eyes were closed, but my mind was not. Every word the woman said made me more alert. It was like my brain wasn't ready to be both relaxed and focused at the same time. One part of me wanted to rest. The other part wanted to catch every sentence, every phrase, as if it were a test. I found myself silently repeating the phrases after her in my head, thinking, did I say that right? Or what does that word mean again? Instead of drifting off into sleep, I was studying. And I didn't want to study, I wanted to absorb. But that wasn't happening. Not yet. The room felt warmer than usual. My pillow didn't feel right under my neck. The voice in my ears, which had sounded so friendly during the day, now felt slightly too close, like someone whispering at a time. When all I wanted was peace, I turned onto my side. Then my back, then my stomach. I paused the audio, turned it back on, lowered the volume, raised it again. It felt like I was doing 100 little things to make it comfortable, but I couldn't find that perfect balance. The idea of sleep learning sounded beautiful, but the reality felt awkward. My brain just wasn't sure what to do. Should I sleep or should I listen? I kept asking myself that. After a full hour of tossing and turning, I finally dozed off, but lightly. The kind of sleep where you know you're half awake. I woke up twice that night. Once at 1:47 a.m. and again at 3:12 a.m. The second time I sat up in bed and took my earbuds out. I felt irritated. I looked at the screen of my phone, dimly lit in the dark room. The audio had already finished. Silence filled the space. I felt more tired than usual. A little headache sat quietly above my eyes. That morning I didn't wake up feeling smarter or more fluent. I just felt confused. What was I doing wrong? Still, I didn't want to give up. I reminded myself that all new things feel strange at first. Babies don't walk perfectly the first time they stand. So maybe learning a language in my sleep needed time too. Maybe my brain just wasn't used to this kind of passive learning. I decided to try again the next night, but with changes. First, I moved away from using headphones. I switched to a small Bluetooth speaker beside my bed. That way, my ears could rest too. I also chose a new audio file, one with more space between phrases. Instead of back-to-back sentences, this one had gentle music in between. A calm piano. Tune played under the voice. It felt more like a bedtime story than a lesson. That helped a little. The second night, I managed to fall asleep faster, but again, I kept waking up. My dreams were different too. Normally, I dreamed of things from my day, my job, my friends, sometimes silly things like forgetting my shoes. But now the dreams were full of English words, not complete sentences, just floating words. Coffee, window, happy, please, chair, thank you. It was like my brain was opening a window to a language garden, but the flowers weren't fully grown yet. Just seeds, just leaves. Nothing clear. It was strange, and yet I felt curious. A little excited. Even though I didn't understand everything, the fact that English had entered my dreams meant that it was entering my brain in a new way. By the third night, I started getting used to the voice. I wasn't thinking so much anymore. I wasn't trying to catch every word. I just let the audio play. I lay still, stared at the dark ceiling, and allowed the sound to float in the air like smoke. Something changed that night. I didn't wake up in the middle. I didn't feel the need to turn or pause the sound. I just slept, a deep, peaceful sleep. And when I woke up, I felt better than the day before. Not because I learned a new sentence, but because my mind didn't fight the method this time. It accepted it. But still, during the day, I didn't feel like I was making real progress. I would go to work, interact with my colleagues, and speak in my native language as always. I didn't feel smarter or more fluent. I started wondering, is this really working? Or am I just imagining things? The truth was, I wanted results fast. I wanted to wake up one day and suddenly speak like a native. But deep down, I knew that wasn't how learning worked. It needed time, repetition, patience. On the fourth night, something unexpected happened. I had just played an audio about shopping in English. The speaker asked, "How much does this cost?" And then answered, "It's $10. That night, I dreamed I was in a store. A real dream with sounds, colors, and people. In the dream, I picked up a red scarf and asked the shopkeeper, "How much is this?" And she replied, $10. I woke up smiling. It was a small dream, but everything in it was in English. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. That dream gave me a kind of push, a spark. I thought maybe my brain is starting to accept this. I read later that our minds are more open when we sleep, that we remember things better when we learn them in relaxed states. That's why sometimes we remember dreams or random thoughts from the night. Maybe English was slipping in quietly, like a whisper, and building something strong without me noticing, but not everything was smooth after that. On the fifth night, I played an audio that was too fast. The voice spoke quickly, with less pause. That night, I slept badly. My brain felt like it was chasing the voice. I woke up irritated. I realized I needed to be careful about what I chose. The audio had to be simple, slow, and kind. That became my rule. Also, I started noticing something during the evenings. Around 9 p.m., when I was finishing dinner or washing dishes, certain English phrases started floating into my mind. I wasn't trying to remember them, they just appeared. Things like, "Can I help you?" or "That's a great idea." These were lines from the audio I played the night before. It was working, but gently. Not like a storm, but like a breeze. Still, the strangest part was that my emotional connection to English was changing. Before, it felt like a subject in school. Now it felt like a song playing in the background of my life. A soft melody that came and went. I didn't understand every note, but I liked the sound. I liked the feeling. The sixth night, I invited something new into my routine. I lit a candle in my room lavender scented. I made my space softer, warmer. I wanted my room to feel like a place of learning, but also peace. That made a big difference. I started seeing this as more than just language learning. It was a ritual, a time to rest, to grow, and to let go of pressure. Yes, the first few nights felt strange.
I won't lie about that.
My brain didn't know what to do at first. My body resisted change, and my thoughts questioned everything. But with each night, I understood more about myself, about how I learn, about what I need. I needed kindness. I needed rest. And I needed English not as a task, but as a friend now. As I look back on those nights, I'm glad I didn't give up. Because something new was about to happen. Something I never expected. It was a quiet Sunday morning when I first noticed it. I was brushing my teeth, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, the soft sunlight from the window falling across the floor. Everything around me felt calm and familiar, just like any other morning. But suddenly, in my mind, I heard a voice say, "The water is warm." It wasn't in my native language. It was in English. Simple, clear, and uninvited. I stopped brushing and looked into my own eyes in the mirror. I didn't say anything out loud, but the sentence echoed again in my head. The water is warm. And this time, I realized that voice was me. For a few seconds, I just stood there frozen with a toothbrush in my mouth, staring at myself like I was meeting a new version of Jessica. I had spent the past week listening to English while sleeping slow, gentle sentences about everyday things. But I never expected this. I never imagined that English would slip into my inner voice. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a class. It was a thought.
My own thought.
And it was in a different language. That morning stayed with me all day. I kept wondering how that sentence had appeared so naturally. I wasn't trying to practice English. I wasn't even thinking about language. I was just living my normal life, and yet English showed up. Like a visitor who knew the door code and walked right in. I didn't stop there. Throughout the day, more sentences appeared in my mind, always in English. When I opened the fridge, I thought, I need to buy more milk. When I picked up my keys, I heard, let's go outside. When I checked my phone, I quietly said, I have 2 messages.
Again, not out loud, but inside.
In that private space where only thoughts live. It felt strange, magical, and a little bit scary. Was I really changing? Was this what real learning looked like? I didn't want to get too excited, but I also couldn't ignore it. My brain was starting to think in English. Not always, not perfectly, but it was happening. Slowly, naturally, and without permission. I didn't force it. I didn't make a plan. It just began. That night, I went to bed earlier than usual. I wanted to give my brain more time with the sleep audio. This time, I chose a recording about daily routines. Phrases like, I wake up at 7 and I eat breakfast with my family. The voice was familiar now, calm, steady, like a friend who came over every evening to read to me. I let the audio play as I curled under my blanket, and I fell asleep with ease. The next morning, as I made coffee, I caught myself whispering, would you like some sugar? Even though I was alone, I giggled quietly, amused by myself. English had become a gentle presence, like background music in my head. I wasn't translating from my native language anymore. These small sentences were just, they're whole and complete. They arrived already built, already clear. I started to pay more attention. I kept a little notebook on my kitchen table. Every time I caught myself thinking in English, I wrote it down. Some days there were only 2 or 3 sentences. Other days I filled a whole page. The sun is bright today. I'm feeling tired. Let's call her tomorrow. These were not fancy phrases, not academic words, but they were mine, my thoughts, in English. That made all the difference. Of course, not every day was the same. There were moments when my mind returned to my native language, especially when I was stressed or tired. But even then, English didn't disappear. It stayed nearby like a friend waiting patiently for me to return. Sometimes, when I stood in line at the grocery store, I played a little game in my head. I would try to describe what I saw in English. She is wearing a red jacket. The baby is crying. I have 5 apples in my basket. I didn't say any of this out loud, of course, but my brain was learning to observe the world using English words. I began to realize something powerful. I wasn't just learning a language, I was changing the way I experienced life. My thoughts were becoming bilingual. My mind was expanding in quiet ways, and the best part, it didn't feel like study. It didn't feel like work. It felt like discovery. Like peeling back a curtain, seeing a new view outside the window. One evening, after a long day at work, I sat on my couch with a cup of tea. I didn't open any books. I didn't take any notes. I simply let myself relax. And without planning it, I started thinking about my day in English. Today was busy. I answered so many emails. My boss was kind. I forgot my umbrella and it rained. It was like telling a story to myself, not perfectly. Sometimes I searched for a word. Sometimes I repeated a phrase to make it sound better. But I stayed in English. I didn't switch back. And that made me feel proud. Later that week, I called my best friend and told her everything. She was surprised. "You're thinking in English?" she asked. "That's so cool, Jess." I laughed and said, "I know it's weird, but it feels good." She was happy for me, but also curious. "Do you practice during the day?" I told her no. I hadn't done any extra work. Just my nightly audio and the small habit of paying attention. And maybe that was the secret. I wasn't putting pressure on myself. I was letting English grow like a plant, slowly with patience and warmth. I kept going. Each night, I picked a new topic. One night it was travel. Another night, food. Another night, feelings. The topics didn't matter as much as the routine. What mattered was consistency. The soft voice, the calm music, the peaceful sleep. That pattern created a rhythm in my mind, a rhythm that echoed into my thoughts. Soon, I started noticing English during the day in other places too. In songs at the coffee shop and signs at the store and ads on my phone. And when I saw those words, I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel confused. I felt connected. Like I knew them. Like I belonged. I wasn't translating anymore. I was understanding. Then came a moment I'll never forget. I was walking through the park, earbuds in, listening to soft music, not English. Audio, just a relaxing playlist. And out of nowhere, my mind whispered, "The flowers are beautiful." I hadn't seen flowers. I hadn't thought about them. But the sentence appeared. It was as if English had become a second layer in my brain, always watching, always ready. I smiled and said it again quietly. "The flowers are beautiful." It was a small sentence, but it came from my heart. And it was in English. I knew then that something big was happening. My brain had crossed a line, a silent, invisible line between learning and living. English wasn't a foreign thing anymore. It was part of me, not always loud, not always perfect, but always present. I started looking forward to bedtime like never before. Not because I was tired, but because I knew I would grow a little more. Each night was like watering the garden of my mind. Each night added another leaf, another branch. Some nights were quiet. Some nights I dreamed in English. But all of them mattered. I also became more curious. I started asking myself new questions. What would this sound like in English? Or how would I describe this feeling? My inner voice became a gentle teacher. Not strict, not harsh, just curious and kind. And that kindness helped me stay brave. The biggest surprise came one evening while I was watching a movie in English. Usually, I would use subtitles in my language. But that day I turned them off. I wanted to test myself. I watched with focus, but without stress, and I understood more than I expected. Not every word, not every joke, but enough. Enough to follow the story, enough to laugh at the right moments, enough to feel proud. When the movie ended, I sat still on the couch, holding the remote in my hand, heart full. I whispered to myself, I did it. And I smiled. I still had a long way to go. I still made mistakes. I still searched for words sometimes. But now my thoughts were changing. They were walking on two legs, one in my native language and one in English. And the more I walked, the stronger they became. This journey wasn't about sleeping or dreaming. It was about listening, trusting, and giving myself space to grow. I had discovered a new way to learn, a way that didn't hurt or pressure me, a way that felt natural, like breathing. And now as I go to bed each night, I press play, close my eyes, and whisper to myself in English, I am learning. I am growing. I am enough. After noticing that English had slowly started to live inside my thoughts, I became more curious about the way my brain worked. It was strange and beautiful how a few minutes of listening each night had changed the way I talked to myself inside. I didn't want this to stop. In fact, I wanted it to grow. I started asking myself, what else can I do? How can I make this even better without making it hard? One evening, as I stood by my bedroom window watching the sky turn dark, I thought, maybe I need a real routine, a little plan before bed. Something simple, something gentle. I didn't want to go back to long study hours or pages of grammar exercises. I had already walked that road, and it only made me tired and discouraged. No, I wanted to build something different this time. Something soft. Something that fit into my life like a warm blanket. That night, I took a piece of paper and wrote down one line at the top, Jessica's English sleep routine. I smiled as I looked at it like a child giving a name to her own secret project. I made a short list. Just 4 things. Not more. I didn't want to make it complicated. I knew if it felt heavy, I wouldn't follow it. I promised myself it. Had to feel peaceful. The first thing on the list was drink something warm. So that night, I made myself a small cup of chamomile tea. I held it in both hands and sat on the edge of my bed. I didn't check my phone. I didn't open any apps. I just sat quietly watching the steam rise from the cup, breathing slowly. I felt my body calm down. The noise of the day faded, and in my mind, I heard soft English words from the night before. I like to relax before bed. I repeated them gently as if they were a part of the tea. It felt like a gift I was giving myself. The second thing on my list was write one sentence in English, not a whole page, just one sentence. That night I wrote, today I felt peaceful. I looked at the sentence for a moment. It was short, but it felt full. It was true, and it was mine. It made me feel seen and understood. Even by myself. The third thing was listen to my sleep audio. I had already been doing this part, but now I was adding it into a full plan. That night, I picked a recording about weather. The voice talked about sunny skies and rainy days, about warm afternoons and cold winters. I loved the way the words floated softly, like clouds. I didn't try to remember them. I just let them wash over me. The fourth and final step on my list was close my eyes and say goodnight in English. It sounds simple, maybe even silly, but it felt powerful. That night I whispered, good night, Jessica. Sweet dreams. And then I smiled and let the quiet take over. This little routine tea, sentence, audio, and a good night became my gentle ritual. I didn't rush through it. I treated it like something sacred. A quiet time when I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. I wasn't trying to be perfect. I wasn't preparing for a test. I was just giving myself care. In English. Over the next few weeks, this bedtime routine became the most peaceful part of my day. No matter how busy or stressful my work was, I looked forward to those soft 15 or 20 minutes. It was like creating a small world where I could breathe, think, and grow. And it didn't take much. I didn't need a textbook or a teacher or a fancy app. I just needed consistency and calm dot as my routine became a habit. I noticed something amazing. English wasn't just entering my thoughts, it was entering my feelings. One night, after a long day full of meetings and noise, I sat down with my tea, closed my eyes, and thought, I feel exhausted, but I'm proud of myself. That sentence came fully in English, not from a lesson, not from a book. It came from inside me. That moment changed something deep in me. I realized that language wasn't just about grammar or rules. It was about emotion. It was about having the words to name what I felt. And now English was giving me new names for my emotions, new ways to speak with myself. Sometimes I would change the topics in the sleep audio. One week I picked recordings about friendship. The next week, food and cooking. Another week, simple stories about daily life. As the audio played, I imagined myself inside those stories. I saw myself walking through those small scenes, hearing and speaking those same sentences. It became like a movie in my mind. A dream. I could visit every night. And something else happened, too. I started feeling less afraid of English. Before, when I heard someone speaking fast, I would freeze. My brain would shut down. But now, something inside me stayed calm. I didn't understand everything, but I didn't panic. I listened with more trust. I let the words come and go. I believed that my brain was doing its quiet work. Even when I didn't notice it. One evening, I was video calling a friend who had moved to Canada. She switched to English during our chat. Before, I would have quickly said, let's go back to our language. But this time, I didn't. I listened. I answered slowly. I made a few mistakes, but I kept going. I even smiled. At one point, she paused and said, Jessica, your English is really improving. What are you doing? I told her about my little night routine. She looked surprised. You mean no classes? No lessons? I shook my head. Just tea, sleep, and quiet practice. She laughed and said, that's the most peaceful English lesson I've ever heard of. I started telling a few other friends too. Some of them were learning languages like French or Spanish. They were shocked that such a simple plan was helping me so much. One of them even asked if she could try it. I said, of course, just make it gentle. Don't try to be perfect. Just be present. There were some nights when I missed my routine. Maybe I came home too late or felt too tired. On those nights, I didn't punish myself. I didn't feel guilty. I told myself, tomorrow I'll begin again, and I did. That kindness kept me going. I also made a small playlist on my phone. I called it Sleep English. It had different topics, all in slow, soft English. I added peaceful background music and voices that made me feel calm. I never listened to it during the day, only at night. That made it feel special, like a secret key that opened the door to a quiet room inside my mind. Eventually, this routine started affecting my mornings too. I woke up with English words already floating in my thoughts. I found myself humming English phrases while getting dressed. I have a meeting at 10. Let's eat something healthy. Today will be a good day. These weren't just words. They were new ways of seeing my life. I remember one morning in particular. I was running late. I spilled a little coffee on my shirt and had to change. Normally, I would have gotten upset. But that morning, I looked in the mirror and said out loud in English, it's okay. Small things happen. I heard myself say it and I paused. I had spoken to myself with patience. In English, that was huge. It was clear now. The night routine wasn't just helping me learn words. It was changing how I talked to myself, how I reacted to life. It was making me softer, braver, and more open. One weekend, I decided to make my routine even more special. I bought a small notebook with a light blue cover. On the first page, I wrote, English thoughts before sleep. Every night after tea, I wrote one sentence. Sometimes I wrote two. If I felt emotional, I wrote more. These sentences became a mirror for my soul. I'm grateful for today. My heart feels heavy tonight. I miss my sister. I'm excited about tomorrow. All in English. All for me. Reading them later felt like meeting a quieter, wiser version of myself. I wasn't writing for anyone else, just for me. And slowly, these little sentences made me stronger. They reminded me that I was growing, even on days when I felt stuck. Sometimes I didn't have the right word, but I tried anyway. I looked it up the next morning, and then it became part of my sleep world the next night. That's how the learning became a loop, a circle of growth. Now, when I hear someone say, "You can't learn in your sleep," I smile kindly, because I know they're thinking of sleep as a time when nothing happens, but I see it differently. Sleep, for me, is a time when something beautiful is happening quietly, a soft rebuilding, a gentle becoming, and it all started with one little idea. Create a night routine. One that feels warm, safe, and kind. One that welcomes the language like a guest and makes space for it to stay. It's funny how something so simple can change your life, but that's how change really works. Not always loud, not always fast. Sometimes it starts with a teacup and a sentence. It was a quiet Sunday morning when I finally understood how far I had come. The sky outside was gray, and soft rain tapped gently against my window. I was sitting at my little wooden desk with a blanket around my shoulders and my English notebook open in front of me. I hadn't written anything yet. I was just looking at the pages from the past weeks, the simple thoughts, the sleepy sentences, the gentle pieces of me that I had placed there night after night. Some were short, like, "I'm tired today," while others were more open, like, "I hope I can be brave." But all of them, every single one, was written in English, and they felt real. I didn't cry, but my chest felt warm. It was a kind of quiet pride that I hadn't felt before. I hadn't done anything big, no big test, no certificate, no speech in front of a crowd. But still, I knew I had grown. I could feel it deep in my skin, like a light slowly turning on inside me. What surprised me most was how easy it had all felt. Learning had always been stressful for me. At school, I was always the one who studied late, worried too much, and felt like I was always behind. Especially with English. I had once thought fluency was a mountain only strong people could climb. But now I had found a new path, a softer one. A path without pain, without fear. And slowly my confidence had grown, not with effort, but with ease. It started showing in small moments. At work, I no longer skipped emails that were written in English. I read them slowly, and even if I didn't understand every word, I didn't panic. I learned to guess the meaning, to trust the context. If a colleague asked me a question in English, I didn't freeze. I answered simply and calmly. And if I made a mistake, I didn't feel shame. I felt normal. That was new for me. One afternoon, I was in the elevator at the office when I overheard two coworkers talking about their weekend plans in English. Usually, I would have just stayed quiet or looked at my phone. But that day, something different happened. I turned to them and said, "I love that park too. It's very peaceful." They looked at me, surprised, then smiled and nodded. We ended up talking for the whole ride down. It was a small conversation, maybe just 2 minutes. But for me, it felt like a window opening. When I walked out of the building, I laughed softly to myself. I hadn't planned to speak. I hadn't practiced those sentences, but they came. They were already inside me. That's when I realized confidence doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from trusting what you already know. I also began noticing my own voice changing. Not just my English voice, but my inner voice, the one that talks to me all day. Before, that voice was always nervous. It asked questions like, what if I fail? Or what if I laugh? But now my inner voice had changed its tone. It was calmer, kinder. It said things like, try your best, and one step at a time. And more often than not, that voice now spoke in English. One evening, I was walking home after a long day. The streets were busy and my feet hurt. I passed a little coffee shop and saw a sign in English. Be proud of how far you've come. I stopped. I read it again. The words felt like they were written for me. I smiled, not because I understood them, but because they matched what I had already been telling myself. That's when I realized how confidence grows not through pressure, but through permission. I had given myself permission to learn slowly, to make mistakes, to try again. I had removed the stress and found peace instead. And in that peace, something powerful had grown. Belief. Not the loud, flashy kind of belief that needs to shout, but the quiet kind. The kind that sits with you like an old friend. The kind that whispers, you can do this. On another day, I went to a bookstore near my apartment. I wandered into the English section and picked up a short novel written in simple language. I read the first page, slowly, carefully, and I understood most of it. Not every single word, but enough to enjoy the story. I bought it, brought it home, and read one chapter each night before bed, right after my tea and audio. It became part of my routine, and every time I turned a page, I felt like I was walking further into a world that once scared me, but now welcomed me. One night, as I lay in bed with the book resting on my chest, I whispered, I'm doing it. That was all, just those 3 words, but I felt their weight. I was doing it not by force, not by fear, but by showing up every day with softness and patience. There were still days when I felt unsure. Sometimes I forgot words I had just learned. Sometimes I said something and people didn't understand me right away, but I didn't let those moments hurt me anymore. I saw them as part of the road. Small pebbles, not big walls. One morning, my manager asked me if I could help write a short email to an international client. I hesitated for a moment, then said, sure, I'll try. She smiled and handed me the notes. I sat at my desk, took a deep breath, and began writing. Slowly, I formed the sentences. I kept them simple and polite. I checked the grammar twice, and when I felt ready, I sent it. A few hours later, she came by and said, you did great. They understood everything perfectly. I didn't jump or shout. I just nodded and smiled. But inside, a soft light bloomed. Confidence doesn't always show on the outside. Sometimes it grows like roots beneath the surface, quiet but strong. And that was what was happening to me. Even my dreams changed. Sometimes I would dream in English, not full conversations, but small pieces. A question, a reply, a memory. And every time I woke up from one of those dreams, I felt a strange happiness. Like my brain was slowly becoming bilingual. Even while I slept out at home, I started using more English with small things. If I dropped something, I'd say, oops, instead of my usual word. If I made tea, I'd whisper, time to relax. If I looked at the sky, I'd say, beautiful day. These were tiny changes, but they made a big difference. They told my brain, this is safe. This is normal. This is who we are now. I remember once when my younger cousin came to visit. She was learning English at school and struggling. She said, I don't like it. It's too hard. I always get things wrong. I sat next to her and told her about my night routine, about how I learned to be gentle with myself. She listened with wide eyes. Then she said, you mean it's okay to be slow? I nodded. Yes, slow is beautiful. She smiled. That moment stayed with me, because learning without stress isn't just a gift to ourselves. It's something we can pass on to others. Later that month, I joined a small language exchange group online. It wasn't a class, just a group of people, talking casually in English. At first, I was nervous, but then I remembered how far I had come. So I joined. I introduced myself simply, "Hi, I'm Jessica." I'm learning slowly, but I love it. They welcomed me warmly. And soon I was sharing stories, asking questions, and even helping others with words I had once struggled with myself. Every time I joined a session, I felt stronger, more connected. Not just to English, but to people. It wasn't perfect. My grammar was still messy sometimes. My accent was still strong, but my fear was gone. That was the biggest change of all. Confidence had arrived like a quiet friend. It didn't shout. It didn't brag. It just stayed with me, held my hand, and whispered, "Keep going." And I did.